everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Adelina, and in today's video we're going to be talking about succulents. I wanted to share some of my tips and tricks on how I take care of my succulents. I'm no expert, but I have learned a few things as I've maintained these plants throughout the past few years, and they're some of my favorite to take care of. They're very versatile, very easy to take care of. So if you're interested in learning how to take care of succulents and are curious about the process, how to maintain them, then stick around and check it out. If you have any questions about the succulents, let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer them. And with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and show y'all first the sort of little collection that I have of succulents, and then we're going to get into how I maintain them and upkeep them. So with that said, let's get to it. So this video turned out a little longer than anticipated, so I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick overview of the top 6 tips that I talk about, and if you want to know more, just continue watching. But my top 6 tips are: number 1, not to overwater your succulents; number 2, to place them near a bright window; number 3, make sure to propagate; number 4, play around with different techniques; number 5, use a well-drained pot and soil; and then number 6, be patient. Like anything else in this world, it takes time to master craft, so enjoy the process. Now that you've seen a little snippet of some of my succulents, I wanted to go ahead and share with y'all how I upkeep my succulents by giving you a few tips and tricks that I've learned, and then I'm also going to be showing you how I take care of this little arrangement. We planted this guy that you saw outside a few months ago, but it's gotten already overgrown. It sits outside in the shade on that red table that you saw in the front patio. So some of the succulents have stretched a little bit, and I personally like to keep them tight in regard to this arrangement. So yeah, I wanted to show y'all how I maintain this and how I bring this back to the way it used to look. So I hope y'all enjoy it. So I have the succulent arrangement from outside with me. I brought it in to sort of bring it back to what it used to look like whenever we first planted it outside. Some of the succulents, and I'll show y'all now, have gotten a bit leggy, such as this one. You know, we placed it on an area of the house, the front porch, that is, to be more specific, and so it has a little bit more shade, and so some of these succulents have stretched out a bit to get to those sunnier parts of the front porch. So I'm gonna go ahead and fix some of this and bring it back to a more tighter arrangement. And that's the beautiful thing about succulents, is you can just very easily maneuver them and change their placement. So before I get started on working on the succulent arrangement, I wanted to show y'all some of the items that I use for my succulents. Now, these aren't necessary, but you may have questions on what they are, so I wanted to talk through them with y'all. The first thing I'm going to be using today are these shears, and they are specifically for bonsai, and I'm just borrowing them from my husband because he is very much into bonsai and this is what he uses. But I've also used scissors, I've also used just regular shears, so anything can be used, but I just like these because they have a very narrow tip so that it's easy to get into those thinner areas. Whatever you do use, just make sure that it is sterilized because you don't want to bring any sort of bacteria or anything like that into the plant you're cutting. And to sterilize them, I just use some regular rubbing alcohol, and I put it on a little gauze, and I wipe the tips of the shears with that rubbing alcohol. Even if it looks clean to y'all, make sure to go ahead and do that, especially on the blades of the shears, because those are the parts that are going to be touching the plant, and the plant is very vulnerable, as you can imagine, whenever it's cut. So we want to prevent any sort of infection or bacterial growth. So I've rubbed those blades of the shears nicely, so now they are ready to be used. Also next to me I have this little syringe, and I use this to water the plants, and I will talk about that more here in a bit. And then I also have this Greenscape soil moisture meter, because when I first started out with succulents, I use this especially for those smaller pots. You can't really stick your finger, especially if you have rocks or soil cover on top, so this has been very useful as well. So let's go ahead and get started on working on this succulent. So the first thing I'm going to do is to look around the plant and see what I'm working with currently. I see there's some succulents that are no longer part of the original plant, like this one right over here. They fell over probably because they got knocked over or they just fell down. There's also these other little succulents that have fallen over from the mother plant and have now formed roots. There's also new little babies in other areas, and like I mentioned, some of the stretching going on in these jelly bean plants. There's various types of succulents in here. You don't have to know their names, but you know, as I've gone in the past few years, I've started picking up on some of their common names, definitely not their scientific names because those are a little bit more complicated. But as you will see, there's a big echeveria right over here. There's an elephant's bush plant right back here. There's also a jelly bean plant that the leaves are sort of falling off here and there, so I'm going to be using those to propagate. There's also this crassula right over here. So yeah, there's a good variety, and I think it doesn't look too bad. Like I mentioned, it's been out there a few months, but it definitely needs to be tightened up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. The first thing I want to do is take out some of those dead leaves because they're not really doing any favors to the plant. Like for example, right down here, this leaf is dead, and you can just pull it out and just throw it away because it's not serving any sort of purpose. It actually might hurt the plant down the road if it's bringing any sort of bacteria or anything like that. And any other little leaves, I'm going to go ahead and remove, including any sort of fallen off pieces like this one, for example. I can definitely use and propagate. So I'm going to go ahead and put this aside and use to propagate for later. So we don't want to throw away these nice healthy pieces. Slowing down to show y'all. I don't know if you can see if this will focus, but you see at the very end there's a little tiny baby jelly bean that's forming off of this fallen leaf. It's so cute. I'm doing this, you know, sort of taking off any sort of old leaves and separating the ones that are healthy, I wanted to provide y'all with some tips that I found useful in taking care of succulents. The first question that I always get asked from friends and family that come over and see my succulents is, wow, how are you keeping them so healthy? You know, I always kill mine. I think that the most problematic thing with succulents is that we overlove them, right? And I'm definitely guilty of that, especially in the beginning when I first got my succulents. And what I mean by that is you just take such good care of them and pay so much attention. You know, you water them every single day, and that ultimately leads to their demise. And you really don't want to water succulents that often, especially mature ones like this, because it will kill the plant. Succulents usually don't like to have what we say, or what we call wet feet, and that is, you don't want to have the bottom of the pot be so saturated with water that the feet of the succulent roots are constantly in water. That will for sure kill your plant, and so that is something that we want to prevent by not overwatering the succulents. The second thing I would say is making sure that they're in a spot that has enough sunlight. As I mentioned earlier in this video, this particular plant may not be in the ideal place. What I mean by that is it's not getting full sun all the time. It's on a west facing area of the house. You want to particularly focus your attention on the south facing areas of the house, or really where there's a lot of sunlight. And they really do want to have a nice full 10-hour days of sunlight. And so if you don't, then you run the risk of overwatering them because they will not be getting enough sunlight, and then you also will be getting some of these leggy plants. Again, I don't mind that as much because I know how to take care of succulents now to where I can bring them back to what they used to look like. But if that's not something that you don't want to do, and you want your plant looking nice and tight all year round, you really want to make sure that these are next to a really bright spot in your house, or you invest in some growing lights. So that's definitely one of the most important things when having succulents. Alrighty y'all, so I am done picking out some of those dead leaves and things like that. There was a bunch in there, as you will see some in my hand right here, but there was also some that survived. So for example, these sort of little guys, or these, you want to make sure to save. So the ability to propagate these plants so easily is definitely something that I enjoy, and it's wonderful because you get to not only save money, but you can have many of these plants all around your house. And they also come in a great variety. As you see, this is just a very small portion of that, and they just look so beautiful. There are some that are very colorful, and you can match and mix them with the decor in your house, and they're just so fun. You know, as you get more advanced, you can even play around with the idea of the plant being really leggy. I've seen succulents where it's just a stem and just the very little tip is the rosette, and so it looks like a little vase of, you know, roses with stems. So it's very fun to play with these. It's very artistic and it's very therapeutic. When I get home from a long day and I just want to just calm my thoughts and be able to be present in the moment, I go to my succulents. I like to look at them, rotate them every once in a while on the windowsill, do this sort of upkeep, and yeah, it's just very therapeutic. And more on the therapeutic part of it, I was actually talking to my husband the other day, and he was telling me that there was a clinical trial done that showed the act of actually putting your hands in the soil and interacting with it helped some patients with their clinical depression. So that's really cool, and I totally understand it because there's just something very therapeutic to me. It relaxes me when I come home and I can take care of these plants. And there's something so rewarding in seeing your hard work literally pay off by having really healthy plants and having plants that are beautiful and you know, not only clean the air in your home, but make it more homey and more relaxing. So definitely something that you should check out if you're interested in succulents. So now that I have taken off all of the dead leaves and any of the other fallen leaves in here, I'm going to go ahead and move around some of the rocks because I'm going to be setting down some of these plants back in here. But so I'm going to be cutting some of these more leggy succulents because, like I mentioned, I like them a little bit more compact. And what I like to do is cut the stem and have a nice clean cut. And I'm gonna go ahead and cut down here at the bottom as well. So as you'll see right over here, just an inch down, and set that aside because I'm going to be putting that back in the soil. That's the beautiful thing about succulents, is you could just literally set them back down and have them grow again, and you can literally play with those arrangements very, very easily. Now usually what you want to do is have the little nub where you cut the plant off dry off and form that sort of callus. But in this case, since we have the plant outside, it's been very dry, it should be okay to just go ahead and set it down. And as you will see right over here, there's a little baby on this stem. So I'm gonna go ahead and save this stem for propagation. And as you will notice, I'm not cutting them totally down to the bottom because these little stems that are back in here will actually eventually fall off and grow new babies at the bottom of the base. So I'll leave those in there, just a little bit more hidden, but I will leave those in there nonetheless. I kind of like these more leggy jelly bean succulents right over here, so I'm gonna leave those. However, this one I think is getting a little bit too lengthy, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut this off just a little bit so that we have a nice and neat succulent. So now that you see we have this little open area, so I'm gonna focus on that area, and that's where I'm gonna be putting some of these old succulents back in. And so just how I did with the other one, I'm gonna take off the bottom leaves. I'm just gonna break them off because these are very, very easy to break off. And I'm gonna go ahead and put it back in the soil. Alright, so I'm all done with positioning the new plants in here and putting the rocks back in. As you will see, now that area is no longer empty. I think it looks really pretty. There's a lot of stuff going on back here, so I think that's a little resting area, and once these grow, they will fill this out as well, so we won't have to worry about that staying empty for too long. As you will see, the elephant's bush has been cut back a little bit so that it's a little bit more neat looking, but still draping over the pot because I think that looks really pretty. I didn't have to do much with the echeveria except for taking some of those old leaves off and moving some of the rocks around. But I think this looks so much better already, and it looks so beautiful and balanced. So I'm gonna go ahead and water the succulents now. I haven't watered them, I would say, in about 2 weeks. And that's usually the time frame that I like to go with these older succulents because, like I said, you don't want to overwater them. It's way easier to just not water them as much, if anything, than overwater them. Sometimes I can tell that it needs water just by lifting up the pot, and you know, I can tell how heavy it used to be with the water versus how heavy it is now. So it's definitely a learning experience. So I would recommend that you spend some time with your succulents and learn all about them and enjoy the process because it's fun. So let's go ahead and get into the watering. What I like to do is get a glass of water and the syringe. The syringe helps with the water distribution, especially for arrangements. You know, you don't want to have all the water go in one area, and I also personally don't like to have water droplet markings on my echeverias. I know that's very nitpicky, but these are just so beautiful and pristine looking that I just don't want to hurt them in any way or you know, damage the integrity of the leaf. So what I do is get some water, I put it in the syringe, and then I go ahead and water the succulent that needs the water. So I put it right underneath this one, and I do about a full syringe in every little area. So this one is 10 mLs. So if you can see, I'm gonna go ahead and put the water right over here because you really want to focus it on the ball, on the root ball of the succulent. Another reason why I use the syringe is because it doesn't make as much of a mess. You know, if you have a watering can, you can't really control how much water is going out as much. And then it's much more difficult to get it to only water the little pots, especially in regard to succulents that are in tiny, tiny pots that don't require a lot of watering. So I am all done watering this plant. I'm gonna go ahead and put it back outside and also show y'all some of my smaller succulents and how I like to take care of those. So look at how beautiful this turned out. It's so pretty. It looks wonderful against this red pot. There's a lot of contrast, but it also picks up some of those warmer tones in the echeveria. This is another little pot that I have, but this one stays inside. But as you can see, there's some old leaves that need to be picked up. Some of these are getting a little leggy, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut those back down. And I personally like this little flower that's coming out of this succulent, so I'm gonna keep that there for now and then cut it back down once it gets dry. My next tip on taking care of succulents is having a pot that's well drained, and what I mean by that is having a pot that has a hole on the bottom. This one has one, and so does the other one that I worked on, and that ensures that you're not overwatering your succulents, especially if you're a beginner and you're just starting out, you know, trying to figure out how much water your succulent needs and all of that good stuff. So I would definitely recommend starting out with a pot with a hole. Not all of mine have holes, just because I figured out now how much water these need and how not to overwater them. There's definitely been a few cases where I have overwatered them, so that was sad, but you know, it's a learning experience, and it's definitely worth it to experiment. So I would recommend you do so yourself as well. Tip in taking care of succulents would be to take your time. You know, it's definitely a learning process, and you know, I've definitely had some setbacks with some of these, but it's so enjoyable at the end and so rewarding. So definitely take your time, be patient with these, especially when you propagate. It does take a few weeks to see any sort of babies come up, so be patient with those. And have fun while you're doing it. Another tip would be to make sure that the soil you're using has plenty of drainage, and you can use that by using different types of soil mixes. I, for example, get the cactus soil that you have in the grocery store, and then I mix it with some perlite to make sure that it has extra drainage, especially if I'm going to be keeping the succulent inside, because it's cooler in here, and that water won't evaporate as fast. So definitely make sure to have nice and well-drained soil that includes either other materials in it, like rocks and stones or things like that, or just mix it yourself with perlite.
You make me nervous. I think I might be hooked on you. All of the things you said to me, it seems like you like me too. We can take it slow, make sure we do this right. Canceled all my plans to be with you tonight. So just sit with me, talking to the night until the morning, building
That looks much better. I left some of the leggier jelly succulents just how they were before, because I like the different heights in the bowl. So I left those, and then I left the succulent and then the echeveria just how they were. Some of the ones on the ends I did shorten because I wanted to have some shorter succulents down on the bottom. And I think that looks so cute now, and so beautiful. So as you will see, some of them are leaning that way. That means that I had the pot facing this way towards the window. So what I'm going to do now is have the pot face the window this way so they can straighten back out. And like I mentioned, I'm going to leave this flowering bit on the succulent just because it looks so cute and pretty. As you see, they're little trumpets, and see what happens. Look at how pretty this now looks. It's much more balanced. There's a little place for everything. So I love how it turned out. And then here's some detail shots of this one as well. It's much more well balanced now. There's all sorts of different heights of plants and textures. And I think it turned out really, really beautiful. So go ahead and take this back to its home, which is right over here in this window. And as I mentioned, I am going to leave it this way so that these plants that were starting to go towards where the window was before will now straighten up. I also went ahead and placed this arrangement back outside, so now it's on this red table, and I think it looks so pretty. Look at how all of the plants look in this little pot. And like I mentioned, this is outside in our front area of the house, and it looks very, very well put together now. It makes a little statement piece on our little balcony area. Hi guys, so it's been 2 weeks since you last saw these succulents. I wanted to quickly give you an update on how things are looking so that you can see yourself. Things are still fine, even though we cut some of these off and put them in the soil again because they were getting a little leggy. They're doing just fine, as you can see. Very healthy. They're already starting to develop some roots because whenever I move them, they're pretty sturdy in there. And then look at this. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Let me see if I can get a close-up. But there's a little baby down here. If you remember, I told you that I like leaving the stems in the actual soil just to allow new babies to pop up. And if you see right over here, right on the bottom, that's exactly what's happening here. There's a little baby that's popping up from this old stem. And even though, you know, the stem itself is not that pretty, it's eventually going to fall off and this little baby is going to get nice and big and you'll have another succulent. So that's the beauty of these. And yeah, so as you'll see, all of them are doing great. We cut this one off as well and put it in here. There's just a few leaves. The old leaves that are on the bottom are starting to get a little yellow, but overall everything is looking very healthy and pretty. There's still this little flower up here, so I'm gonna leave that until it overblooms. And yeah, so success with this little succulent arrangement. So here is the red pot with all of these succulents in it as well. This is 2 weeks later. As you'll see, the babies are doing just fine. They're very healthy. They're starting to settle in their new home. They're pretty firm in there. This little guy is starting to have new growth up here, and these are just thriving. I mean, they're moving all over the place, and they're looking really, really good. And so is this one. So yeah, I think it looks wonderful. I might have to shorten this one because it's starting to lean over a little bit, but look at how beautiful and healthy these look without much care. And literally all we did was just snip at certain points and let them grow at their new spot. So yeah, with that said, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I hope it gives you some encouragement to pursue succulents as well, or any sort of plant really, because it's just so soothing. And oh, and there goes my dogs. But anyways, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you some inspiration to maybe get your own succulents and get your hands dirty. It's so much fun and it's really enjoyable. And if you have any questions or anything, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer those or do any sort of other videos for more questions or tips on taking care of any sort of plant. Anyhow, I hope you'll have a wonderful evening, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks for stopping by. Bye!